Welcome to the Unapologetic Midlife Podcast. I am Mindy Labazetta, your host, and I am here today with Ofer Ziv, licensed clinical social worker. Welcome, Ofer.
Thanks for having me, Mindy.
Let's tell me a little bit about yourself. So obviously you're a licensed clinical social worker and you are in private practice.
Yes. I have been in private practice now for about 7 years. Prior
Okay.
to that, I was working in mental health and in addiction, both outpatient and inpatient, and had the honor of
Okay.
working at a veteran facility, helping veterans recover from addiction. And of course, with addiction, always
Wow.
there is mental health that's involved. So yeah, this is kind of in the midlife career.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of the fun part about midlife is we have all this experience that life has kind of brought us to this point. And you even being in private practice now for 7 years, right? Private practice offers you the ability to kind of specialize and kind of hone in on a specific area or population. And for you, it's kind of coming to, I know you're kind of my go-to for my referrals for my guys. You love working with men. This is kind of what you're honing in on.
Yes, I've always gravitated toward working with men. Started with
Yeah.
that role in addiction in the inpatient place. It was a veteran-only facility, and I guess that's really where my passion grew to work with men. I have done my own men's
Mm-hmm.
work over the years
Mm-hmm.
for over 12 years now, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit into that too. Um, so I've done my own men's work. I've done my
Yeah.
own mental health counseling when I was younger. And there's a lot to be said about the role of emotions in men. And that's kind of really my passion is to help men connect with themselves, connect with their feelings, their emotions, and kind of understand what's the role even of emotions in our making. We're such a cognitive, such a thinking oriented culture. And
Mm-hmm.
for men especially, we're so in our head that
Mm-hmm.
I find that connecting the mind and the emotion with the body is a really important part of recovery.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what like led you in. So you said you did your own work with mental health.
Yes. So yeah, I guess I'll get a little bit into my story. I served in the military from about age 18 to 22.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came out of the military, I remember someone asked me when I guess when I started therapy in my early 20s, someone asked me, where do you feel your feelings? And I said, in my head, that's where I feel my feelings. And I really thought that that's where you felt your feelings. I don't really remember anything else. And over time and working on myself, I really started to connect with emotions in the body, in the chest, in the heart. And it was somewhat of a painful process in the beginning. Just
Yeah.
having been disconnected from feelings for so long that it was normal, to
Mm-hmm.
me was somewhat of an arduous process of getting connected slowly. And I think in many ways, I really still find it my life's journey. Like it's definitely not a
Mm-hmm.
checkbox. It's an ongoing process for me to be connected to feelings, to open my heart, be connected to love. That's a challenge sometimes.
Yeah. Especially when you're used to kind of turning that
Yeah.
off, or that's just been kind of how you've gone about your life. This is a new way of being, I guess, present and be connected whole mind and body.
Yes, yes, exactly. There is so much that is happening in our feelings, in our emotions. When I work with men, sometimes some of the things I say is, imagine, I don't know if you've ever scuba dived, but the first time that somebody snorkel or scuba dive, oftentimes they kind of go underwater and they discover this whole other world that we just are not aware of. And that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
what I feel that emotions are like. There's a whole nother world that is happening here, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a purpose to it. It gives us information
Mm-hmm.
about ourselves. It gives us
Mm-hmm.
information about um, other other people and how we communicate to other people.
Mhm.
there's a lot that's going on here, and if we're disconnected from it, then we're missing a lot. And again, I think
Yeah.
most men don't, we're not aware that we're not connected. We truly think that we just feel feelings in so that's our head. So that's an invitation for me to you and to our listeners, is that
Mhm.
if you're, especially if you're a guy, if you're a male, and you've always felt like you've felt feelings in your head, there might be a different way of experiencing feelings. And there is a lot of benefit in doing that.
Just, what did that look like for you? So you're off to
Yeah.
therapy and, you know, what helped you?
Yeah. So several things helped. One, quite honestly, was psychedelic therapy, even back then, really helped
Mhm.
me connect to
Mhm.
feelings initially. And
Mhm.
once that opened that door for me, then it was a journey of, okay, now that I feel feelings and, after I haven't
Mhm.
felt them in 20 years, probably, then what do I do now? Oftentimes, feelings can be overwhelming. They
Mhm.
can often not make sense in the beginning. So for me, it was a process of, first of all, tolerating feelings and leaning into them,
Mhm.
even at first when they didn't make sense, when I didn't
Mhm.
know what was what. I just knew I felt something, and it was
Mhm.
sometimes unpleasant, often. It was somewhat of a process of starting to identify feelings and pulling them out and saying, okay, this feels like sadness, this feels like anger, this feels like grief,
Mhm.
this feels like happiness. When I meet with clients, I talk to them. So I guess first we do some work to connect to the body, because this is really where we feel
Mhm.
feelings, and we go through a process of mindful awareness. You probably have done it with some of the folks you work with. We do some mindful awareness and we
Mhm.
bring attention to the body. And what I tell people
Mhm.
is just be aware of anything that you notice. Don't look for an emotion or a feeling. Just be open to any sensations that you notice.
Mhm.
Sometimes it starts with
Yeah.
external things, more the breath or attention. And once we start connecting to something, then we can start being curious and inquiring, what else do I notice?
Mm.
And then slowly kind of working through identifying what feeling those are. One thing I sometimes say is that, imagine that each feeling was a different color and
Mhm.
you scribbled it on a board. And so initially, if you take blue and you take red and you take green and you take yellow and you take brown, you take all these colors and you just kind of draw them on top of one another, what you'll get is kind of a messy, dark blob of,
Mhm.
tangled yarn. And that's sometimes,
Yep.
at least for me, that's kind of how it started. Um, and then it's a process of, how do I start to pull each yarn out of the ball and identify the colors? Okay, so this is blue. This
Mhm.
kind of feels sadness. This is anger. This is joy. And through that process, so it's okay in the beginning to not know what you're feeling. Just feel something. And then
Mhm.
with time, you will
Mhm.
start to identify the feelings and label them, and be more clear about, what you feel when.
Mm. Yeah, start to break that sensation down. I mean, I'm assuming you probably have this as well, but some of my adults will kind of laugh at me, but I give them emotion lists and sensation lists to help them kind of break it down a little bit, because you get a lot of dissociated people, right, who haven't felt the feelings, and men in particular, right? So the lists just help to kind of sometimes, oh yeah, I am feeling that, or oh yeah, I do, I notice this too.
Yeah, yeah. And I usually just call it disconnected, because
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
with witches that have mild association, but I think
yeah,
most of us can be disconnected at times. Um, and
absolutely.
and us guys tend to be disconnected from feelings quite a bit. And
Yeah,
sometimes it's that process of really kind of um, working with identifying, well, why do I even want to do this? I bring it to somebody, that
yeah.
a male, of like, so maybe we should connect to emotions, and they kind of give me a funny look, kind of like I asked them to. eat something that's not savory, and they're like,
Not edible.
yeah, why would I even want to do that? And sometimes we have to really kind of understand. So, why do we have emotions? What are they trying to, how are they trying to serve us?
Mhm,
And if we start simply by considering, okay, so emotions are trying to communicate something to me about this machine, this body that I operate,
mhm.
very similarly to the way the dashboard on a car is trying to communicate to you when there's a problem. You know, you could put
Mhm.
black tape over the dashboard so you're not bothered by the things, but it doesn't mean something's not wrong. So just because you are
Right.
ignoring it
Yep.
doesn't mean it's not wrong. And that's why people come to us. They come to us when they're feeling anxious. They come to us when they're feeling depressed. And
Mhm,
that's sometimes what happens when you've been ignoring this part of the machine, this part of this body that's trying to
mhm,
communicate to you. I am feeling upset. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling sad. And if we ignore it for long enough, it will start creating problems. And then we have to take it to the
mhm.
mechanic to fix it.
Yep.
But then part of not
And you
having
don't wanna
to
get to the
take
point
your car
where
to the
it's not
mechanic,
running. Right.
what's that?
You don't wanna get to a point where your car's not
Yes,
running at all.
right, exactly. And it's nice to know how to listen to it, how to maintain it. I think that's an
Mhm,
important thing is, okay, somebody came with anxiety. We worked together, we figured things out. Okay, but now how do you
mhm,
manage this body and these feelings moving forward? Like life will continue to happen, feelings will continue to come up, issues are going to continue to come up, and it's helpful
mhm,
to be able to access them, to learn to understand what they're trying to communicate to us, our feelings,
mhm,
sometimes our parts, right? The parts of our
mhm.
emotional parts that are trying to communicate things to us. And it's helpful to be able to listen and then to say, okay, I hear you. Okay, I'm feeling hurt. Yes. Now what do I do with that? All
Yeah,
right. Well, we'll have to figure it out.
yeah. I think part of too, like you said, the disconnection. So if a guy comes to you and he's disconnected and he's not feeling really anything, I guess something that comes to mind for me is also like the good things. If you're not feeling the bad things, you're probably kinda not feeling the good things either.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we were working, this whole emotion things, again, I'll go back to working with the veterans at the addictions place, right? So when you think about it, what alcohol and drugs do to us and help us with is disconnecting, right? We can take something and not
Mhm,
feel what we're feeling. So some people
mhm,
use substances for that, other people use food, some people just can disconnect without drugs. And
mhm,
what happens when you reconnect is that oftentimes there's some dysregulation that happens. There's, feelings are too much, or you want to disconnect from them
mhm,
altogether. And when you think about depression, what is depression? It's depressing emotions. We're pushing everything down
mhm,
so we don't feel anything. So we don't feel the bad things, but
mhm.
we also don't feel the good things. And
Yeah.
sometimes anxiety is kind of like operating on the other side where things are too much, they're too intense, and emotions are overwhelming us. That often
Mm.
leads to anxious feelings. So, yes, I don't think we've come up with that pill that just allows you to feel the good feelings and not the bad feelings.
Yeah, no.
Um, it's either on or off.
Yeah, it's like all or nothing, and I've kinda noticed that too, and this isn't to knock antidepressants in the world, but I don't think even with the psychedelic work, there's not gonna be a magic pill in a bottle that's gonna make everything perfect. I don't personally think that exists. I think therapy, I think even the psychedelic work, it's all gonna come with the hard work that then goes along with it. Because if you're not doing the things or, practicing mindfulness, reflection, right? Because reflection, I feel like hindsight is a wonderful thing, but I think it also can be an amazing learning tool in how to make better changes or better choices going forward sometimes too.
Yeah, I agree. I also do some psychedelic, psychedelic therapy with ketamine. And
Mm,
one of the things I tell my folks is, sometimes psychedelics can help you reach a certain experience, a certain state of freedom, of peacefulness, of connection. But
mhm,
then our work is to then figure out, how do I get there now that I know where I'm going? Before I was kind of in the dark. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that where I was isn't great, but I didn't know where I even could go. So, psychedelics kind of open up sometimes this path to a different state and connect you there, not just
Mm-hmm.
with knowing, but with an experience. And now you know what it's like to feel peaceful, to feel calm, to feel connected. And now we have to do the work of, how do I get there now without psychedelics?
Yeah, it kind of leaves you this imprint of like, okay, I felt that. So now I know I'm capable, but now how do
Exactly.
I like redo that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have to do the work
Yeah.
and move forward. But, you know, connection is such a big thing. I think even
Agreed.
when we talk about trauma, I think it was Gabor Mate that said that um, trauma is not what happened to you, it's what happened inside you as a result of what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the disconnection that happens inside us as a result of this traumatic event or experiences that we've been through. It forced us to disconnect. And now, in my opinion, life and our life's journey often includes, certainly for a lot of guys, it includes the process of reconnecting. Because if you're
Mm-hmm.
disconnected, it's not going to come to you at work. Nobody's going to tell you, hey,
Mm-mm.
you're not connected enough, but it's going to show up in your relationships. It's going to show up with your kids. It's going to show up sometimes with your mental health, with anxiety and depression. It's going to show up in different places. And you can either say, well, this is just how I am. I'm disconnected and everybody deal with it. Or you start listening and understanding maybe there is something I need to do differently. Um, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I'm in my upper phase, and I can think about the old generation, right? The generation above us who
Before.
was
Yep.
very kind of disconnected from emotions,
We don't
whatever they
talk
say
about
by your
it. We don't
bootstrap,
feel
pull yourself
it.
by
We
the
don't address
bootstrap and just kind of
things.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the new generation, probably some folks younger than me, are looking for connection. They're looking for connection in their
Mm-hmm.
relationships. They're looking for connections with their parents. And, people in their midlife right now, we're kind of in the middle generation where the generation above us was completely disconnected. The generation beneath us tends to be a lot more connected. And we need to kind of figure out if we want to do the work to get connected, to be in our feelings. And things don't get better if you don't do the work and you ignore them. If anything, they just
Absolutely.
get more difficult.
They get harder. They get harder and harder. I mean, I know I don't need to shuffle through my paperwork to pull it out, but there's definitely statistics that I've seen about men's mental health. And, we need connection for not just mental health, but physical health too. We do better when we're connected to other people. And as men age, I feel like the statistics, it almost got worse as men age. There was more isolation, more loneliness, and loneliness can be a number one predictor for an early death. I don't know if you've heard that, but I've seen that in a few different areas, and that's specific to men, which is really wild, right?
Yes, it's really striking. So I heard about this more from the other side. There was a book, The Blue Zone by
Yes,
Dan.
love that. I didn't read the
Forget
book,
his.
but I saw the
Yes,
the show.
yes, yeah. They made a show about it, and so right, it's all about these. What makes a healthy life? What makes people live to be 100? And
Hmm.
social connection is one of the major things. And we know this. We know this that people who have a lot of connections live longer. Again, thinking about the old generation, there used to be a lot more, I think, connection, at least where I come from. Um, you
Yep.
know,
Same
guys
here. Our
sitting
families would get
together, spending
together.
time together.
Yeah.
And now there's so much,
Card
again,
games.
disconnection in our world. And
Yep.
men really struggle with this as they You know, at first you might be busy with work, with kids, but then when those things grow, you find yourself that you don't have friendships, you don't have people to hang out with. And then at
Mhm.
40 or 50, you kind of, how do I make friends at 40 or 50? And that might be a good
Yeah.
time for us to maybe talk about some of these groups that do
Yeah.
get together. Yeah, before I say that, I'll just say, my some of our families are from the Middle East and the Mediterranean, and
Mm-hmm.
in those cultures, there is a strong element of socialization among men, among women, just not around alcohol, around coffee. Think about Greek people sitting in a taverna every night. They
Mm-hmm.
just get together and they drink coffee and they
Get your
listen to music.
coffee. Yep.
And
Yep.
it's so important. And I love here. There's like, if you go to dashes, there's always some groups of men sitting drinking coffee. So I
Yeah.
think we do have it
Yep.
here, but it's not easy to find sometimes.
It is not
And
easy to
so
find, and
one
I
of
do
the
struggle with this when I'm referring men to places, like, trying to help them because I I have an emphasis on not communication and community with men in particular. Yeah. So how do you find this? Where do you direct your men to that you work with?
Yes. So I became aware of men's groups. Apparently, it's a thing. So men's groups we call it men's circles. There's actually different
Okay.
organizations all around the country that facilitate these kind of gatherings. The one
Okay.
that I've been involved with for over 10 years has some local chapters here in Buffalo and Western New York and Rochester is the Mankind Project. Mankind
Okay. I've
Project
heard
or
of Mankind.
MKP USA. And the Mankind Project is a non-religious, non-political group that is non for
Okay.
profit. They started here in the US and then they spread also outside of the US. They have it internationally as well in all kind of countries. And it's really started with the understanding that men are lacking healthy initiation, they're lacking connection,
Mhm.
and they're lacking emotional
Yep.
awareness. And so
Yep.
it started off with doing weekends where you would go for a weekend and kind of Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and you go through kind of an intensive process of initiation. I won't say too much about it. There's
Okay.
interesting information about the MKP website. But what I love about it is that after the weekend, people form groups, circles, men's circles, and they keep meeting with their group of men. And so there are,
Wow.
yes, oftentimes from that, or sometimes it's your group outside of, not necessarily the people you did the weekend, but it's people who had that experience. And part of that is also giving us language to discuss feelings, giving us some processes to help men go deeper into their feelings. And there's a high emphasis on accountability, on
Love that. Yeah.
responsibility. So it's not just sitting in circle, it's also how to support other men, how to support other
Mhm.
men and to encourage other men to sit in circle and open up, right? We're not just sitting in circle talking about football and the weather. We're talking
Mhm.
about our issues. We
Mhm.
bring our issues, and oftentimes what people in the circle try to do is help you go deeper and understand where is this coming from for me, right? So
Mhm.
if I go to the circle and I say, oh, I had this interaction with my boss and they did this, they did that, and maybe I'm in blaming mode, the feedback I'll often get is like, okay, so you're in blaming mode. Where is your part here? What
Mhm.
what do you
Yeah.
need to look at? Why is this happening in your life? So we don't do therapy, but we do processes,
I like
and
that though. That's
those
good.
processes are often kind of biodrama where they really are trying to help you get deeper into the issue, especially when you have patterns repeating in your life, to try to really heal and open up emotionally about what are you feeling? Where are you feeling it? So really kind of facilitate emotional awareness and emotional connection.
Oh my gosh. I love this. And this isn't a judgment against men, right? I think there's so many factors that play into this, as we kind of discussed when we started, but I love the idea, and I had to do this in my own life, if I'm being completely honest. I'm noticing I keep getting this kind of person in my life. And like one day it just hit me. I'm like, ugh, I don't like telling this story because I'm noticing I have a pattern. I have a pattern and I tend to attract this kind of person in my life, and it always ends in disaster. Why?
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
It's to me, it's a
Yes.
hard truth of I need to acknowledge my own part and why I keep repeating this pattern.
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
it hits different when it's coming from other men that maybe you've built relationships with, friendships with. Maybe there's a respect factor there too.
Exactly. And there's an agreement that this is what we do here. We call each other on our bullshit. If I'm kind of in
Mm-hmm.
blaming mode, people are gonna be like, "You're sounds like you're in blaming mode. What's going on for you? What are you feeling right now?"
Mm-hmm.
So there's kind of agreements around it. But I love what you said because that doesn't happen just for women, right? Happens for men too, is that we have
Oh
patterns as
yeah.
humans that keep repeating in our life. And, I always say if something happens to you, the same thing happens to you in different places, who's the
Mm-hmm.
common denominator, right? It's you. So what am
Yep.
I doing to participate in that? And it really gives you power, right? Because if I'm shifting from blaming into looking internally at what's happening and why it's happening, then I can maybe change it, right? It's not just this thing that happens
Mm-hmm.
to me that I'm powerless around.
Yeah. No, there's so much power with that. And my hope is that that enables people to take a little different perspective on their lives and feeling like, okay, I don't have to be stuck in this mode. Like I can change my life. Because I think so many times people feel stuck that they can't change the circumstances that they're in, but I feel like there's always things we can change. We just tend to have our blinders on too tightly to see the bigger panoramic picture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll go back to the men's circles. Is
Okay.
that those circles tend to be open to all men? Anyone
Mhm.
can come and join. They don't cost anything. They meet regularly, either weekly or bi-weekly. And
Okay.
it's kind of the common, what brings people together is that just men who want to be better men, who want to be better fathers, better
Mhm.
husbands, better friends, and
Better
want
communicators.
to better communication, yes, better connection. And
Mhm.
and it also offers connections with other men because slowly you kind of develop these friendships, especially when you're opening up about yourself. You're not talking about, the day to day. You're talking about real stuff.
Yeah. They say that women tend to have deeper connections because we're looking to kind of rip the Band-Aid off and get in to the deeper stuff. Women tend, this is based on like research, tend to not want to have like such surface level relationships, where men
Yeah.
tend to want to have surface level relationships, which ties into that suppression of emotions, right? If I don't get to the real stuff, then, I don't have to feel that stuff. But this is changing that, these groups, which is
Yes, they
great.
are. And I would even challenge that perception that men want that. I think we were just
I do
told
too.
that. We were
Yeah.
told this is what men do. We talk about football, we
Right.
talk about sports, we talk about surface
The
level
weather.
things and away from vulnerability, right? Away from really
Mhm.
talking about the real stuff. you know but do they really not talk about this stuff, or do they talk about it with their wives? Most men I
I
know
think that's it.
will talk about it with their wives. So why do we talk about these things with our wives but not with other men? Are we
Yeah.
afraid that they'll use it against us, right? That we'll be judged, right? Those are the kind of things that
Mhm.
these groups are trying to break, and to create a safe space for men to really talk about things and to break these experiences that we believe, or
Yeah.
maybe that we had when we were in middle school, high school, when we were made fun of, when we were, vulnerable or hurt,
Mhm.
and kind of reframe these experiences as, oh, you can be around men who are manly, who are strong, and who can also
Mhm.
be connected, be vulnerable. In one of these weekends
Mhm.
that I attended, I remember I was really struck by this one man who was one of the leaders, and
Mhm.
he was so vulnerable and so open, and he was doing his work, and he was hurting, and he was crying, and in front of a group of 100 men. And I just found it
Wow.
so powerful and so inspiring. And I found myself wanting to be like that man, right? I wasn't thinking, oh,
Yeah.
you're not strong. It was the opposite. It's like, what strength
You're
can you
so
have in
brave.
vulnerability? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And to do your work, right? And to connect and to want to feel deeply. And wow, that's inspiring.
And I think so many layers of this, like people are multifaceted. Men don't just have to be strong and stoic. We can be strong and we can also feel our emotions and we can be nurturers. And there's, and when I say soft, I feel like it can have like a negative impact, but at the same time, you're soft and gentle with your children, right? Maybe you're still
Yeah.
dad, but you're showing a different side of yourself to your kids and your wife. And why can't we have I'm going to use gentle because I feel like that's a kinder word. Gentle with our friends and our male companions.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes if we don't, because some guys don't do that with their friends, but they also don't do that with their wives.
Hmm.
And that's when sometimes you'll get these issues in your
Problems.
relationship. Your partner is saying, I don't feel like you're there emotionally. I don't feel like I'm emotionally supported by you. And for some of us, it's like, what is she even talking about? But
It's
that's,
so foreign. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean? What do you want me to do exactly? Right. And sometimes that's the kind of men that come to me to work with me is like, they're like, oh, my wife sent me here. She wants this and that, and I don't know what that means, so please explain it to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's nice that I get to work with men because sometimes just working with a guy like me makes them a little more comfortable rather than kind of, oh, I'm going to go,
Absolutely.
speak to a woman that's going to judge me because I'm this or that. And I've been through it, right? I had my own emotional disconnection. I worked through
Hmm.
it. I'm still working through it. And it's okay. It's okay to be where you're at. You just need to kind of own it and
Hmm.
have the willingness to move forward.
Yeah, I think that desire to want to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. I think, yes, the wife might be sending you, but you're here,
Yes,
right?
and they are here, right? They do take the step, right? They say, okay, I'm here. I recognize something is not right, and I am willing to hear and listen. And oftentimes they are willing, and they want connection. They want a better connection with their partner. They want a better
Hmm.
connection with their kids. Um, it's probably a little bit not cliche, but it's something that most people kind of identify with is that, anger is the only feeling that some men feel. And it's
Like
true. There
anger
was
is
a lot of,
masculine.
yeah, anger is masculine. It makes you feel in control. It makes
Hmm.
you feel strong. And it was also the messages we were taught, whether
Think of
directly or
history. Yeah.
indirectly, by, yeah, right, seeing your dad, if he was not vulnerable but angry, that's what we tend to repeat and mimic. So there's a lot more to feelings and emotion than anger. Um,
Oh, yeah.
and the other really thing that's really important, Mindy, is that it's not just a connection, but when we disconnect from ourselves, we also disconnect from our own intuition.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's an important benefit of working on emotions is to also starting to connect with your feelings, your gut, your
Hmm.
intuition,
Yep.
the things that give you drive, the
Per-
things that give you
yeah.
passion,
Yep.
right? Rather
Oh, yeah.
than work a job I don't like because that's what I've been doing. When I connect to
Hmm.
myself, I can find things that, okay, maybe I can work and also feel fulfilled.
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen things and heard things, and again, I know that there's always bias or it can be skewed. But I was listening to a podcast the other day. It might have been Tony Robbins on Diary of a CEO. It's kind of like one of my favorites, but he was talking about more than ever. There, did you hear that one? I don't know if you heard it or not, but he was talking about more than ever
No,
men
but
are
I've listened to it
disconnected.
before. Yeah.
Yeah, and playing video games in mom's basement, and they lacked passion and drive. it is, I guess it's like at a staggering high. And, I can say through experience of doing this and working with people, like I, I see it, right? I see that. And as a mom raising two sons, like I definitely, I hope that's not what happens, but I don't think any parent hopes that's what happens, So I feel like
Right.
younger and younger, we have to kind of like address this for young folks who maybe think video games and talking to their friends over video games is connecting. What are your thoughts on that?
And unfortunately, that's kind of the norm now. That is how young kids connect, especially when they turn teenagers. It's
Oh, yeah.
hard to say, go get together. That's what everyone does, right? So
Yeah.
how do we how do we help them connect? And that's why I think team sports can be so important,
Hmm.
can be a way to connect and getting them involved in things. Because,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, when I
Activities.
was young, we didn't have computers. That sounds so
Yep.
old, right?
Same.
But
I'm
we
right there
didn't,
with you.
we just, you came home from school, you finished your homework, you just went downstairs and, you know, went
We went
outside
outside.
and people just,
Yep.
yes, people just like ran in
You made
groups,
friends.
right?
Yep. Yep.
Yes, you made friends, you came home in time for dinner, and now they really don't do that as
They come
much.
in and they
So,
isolate.
yeah. So getting them involved in things can be really important.
Yeah. I think that's a big shift from our generation to this generation. I also think that we have a lot more like this isn't a dig on our generation, but at the same time, we just kind of went off. And I think our parents didn't even know where we were half the time, right? We can't do that now. The world is a different place. You don't need CPS knocking at your door because you don't know where your kids are. We have to drive them to these things. And, unfortunately, some schools don't have, the sports teams or the activities. So parents have to invest in community-based resources to have their kids connected beyond school. I know I don't live in my kids' school district either, so that's like a layer, right? I do encourage them to go to the park and they have friends that they'll meet up with at the school nearby and stuff. And they're older, so there's some independence there, but you know, they would also be perfectly content in the house if I didn't make them get out of the house. And I don't want them.
Yeah, I have a son and a daughter, and I find that my daughter is a lot more likely to make plans and spend time with a group of girls than my son.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think boys don't do that as much. They are content, like you
Yeah.
said.
Yeah, and then there's my fiance. I don't know if you know I got engaged, but my fiance who
Congrats.
played hockey his whole life and through college, and he still has group chats from those very young hockey teams that he was on. So for
Yeah,
him, he has all these different pockets of friends through those lifelong sports that he played. And I see the value in it. Absolutely. There's so much value,
exactly. Exactly. That's
you know?
why I also hear about that from clients of mine who are involved in sports, is that they have these friends or groups forever. They're in their 50s,
Yeah.
60s, they still get together with them.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
just kind of points out to the importance of getting involved with a sport, with a
Hmm.
group of anything, and just kind of staying with it.
I think so both my kids are in band, I think that's another great option. Hobbies, like when somebody comes to me and they're like, oh,
Hmm.
I don't have hobbies. I watch Netflix. And I'm like, okay, this is a problem. Like Netflix is not a hobby. Is there a direction that you kind of give with that a little bit too?
Yeah, so there's a website I really love that I direct a lot of people to. It's meetup.com.
Mhm. Yep.
It exists in all cities. That we have one here in Western New York, and you just Google through your interest, whether you like hiking, you like crocheting, whatever it is, yoga,
Hmm.
chanting, whatever it is you like, you search up the groups and it's free and just people getting together, doing things, hikes, kayaking. And it can be a little awkward in the beginning, to go to a group of
Yeah.
people you don't know, but you go once or twice and three times and it tends to be the same people. They start to get to know you. That can be a great way to meet people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew through COVID, because that was a site I would often refer to. It kind of disappeared through COVID, unfortunately. That was a downfall of COVID. But it kind of seems like it's definitely back up and running. And
Hmm.
it's an excellent resource. I think part of kind of connecting back to, you said, the discomfort of feeling emotions. I think of that, right? That little bit of maybe social anxiety or fear of entering a new social situation where you don't know somebody. But it's a good thing to challenge yourself. It's a good thing to say, okay, I'm nervous, but I'm still going to do this anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, the group of people you don't know what's the risk. Worst thing is that you
You
might
go
not
home.
enjoy it and you don't repeat it. But they're open. They're putting their
Yeah.
group out. Probably they were the first. They experienced this for the first time. At some point when they joined the group. So it's just go for it. Try it. It's
Yeah.
a good experience.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I mean, I've heard of wonderful feedback from people who, have said that you've been great to work with, and I know you're a favorite go-to of mine where I'm like, "All right, I got the perfect guy for you, I'm gonna send him over." It's important to have those resources, and it's important, I think, to highlight what it is that's out there, and because this isn't a secret. The resources are not secret, but they're there. And, you going on this journey yourself, I think, is a great highlight for men who are nervous about this process, and your willingness to share that helps them to be like, okay, like he gets it, right? He understands like where I'm coming from. And,
Yeah.
look where he's at, look what he's done. Like you mentioning, you going to these groups and doing these things, and there's resources. You're not alone. Definitely not
Yeah,
alone.
absolutely, absolutely. And I really just I love men's work. It is so rewarding, whether you're working through your own issues or you help other men, you support other men going through their issues. It's so rewarding. And again, the friendships that I've developed through these groups, they really know who I am. I really know who they are. We
Hmm.
have, held each other like in a difficult moment, like maybe shed some tears together and saw each other in our power too. These are
Yeah.
peer led, right? So we all facilitate for one
Hmm.
another, we all support one another, we all listen to one another. And one of the
Hmm.
great things that happens in these groups is when someone else does their work, sometimes they do your work for you, because you hear
Mm.
them and it reminds you or it brings up a part in you that you haven't thought about it in a while or that is present for you and you just haven't quite connected to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very fortunate to have found this group, and there's other groups as well outside of Mankind, um, around the
Hmm.
country. There's Sons of I forget it now, but there's several other groups that if you just look up men's work or men's circles, those will
Okay.
come
They
up.
pop up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know some people are like, I've encouraged people to travel too. That's another fun thing. So if there is a group somewhere or more of these retreats, consisting of these men's circles, sometimes that can be kind of a fun thing too. I'm going to go on this adventure and I'm going to meet some cool people. I think travel is one of the best ways to grow because you see different cultures or you get to see, I don't know, just seeing history sometimes blows my mind and just expands this desire to know and understand and, I don't know, just kind of experience things, you know?
yeah. I think especially, I don't know if you had that experience, but especially when you do this with a group. So let's say a weekend somewhere, or you joined, you met a few people and you are doing an experience together. I always have the picture from the beginning of the weekend and the end of the weekend. And the beginning, everybody's a
I love
little
it.
sheepish, everybody's
Nervous.
kind of a little bit in the background. You see like a group of individuals standing together, and then at the end,
Mhm.
you have another picture, and
Everybody's
there's
hugging and
cohesiveness. Like the group came together, and you
yeah.
you share things, and that's what makes us a group is shared experiences, right? We don't have to
Mhm.
agree about things or even like the same
Yeah.
things, but we have shared experiences, and that creates connection with other people.
Yeah, and I know you said it's non-denominational, it's non-political, and I love that because I feel like we're in a world where it's so like, "Oh, if you oppose me, I can't be friends with you or I can't like you," where I think if people could kinda set that aside a little bit, there's more in common and it binds us, I think, in a way where sometimes there's labels put on things and I think it's not it's annoying because I think there's much more connecting us than what's separating us.
For sure, for sure. I was born in the US and I see this also in Europe and other places is
Hmm.
that outside of the US, people talk about politics. People disagree.
And
We're
have
not trying to
conversations.
convince each other.
Yeah.
Yes, we have conversations and it's not like off the table.
Hmm.
And here there's so like, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religions. Families sometimes split apart because there's disagreement about politics and this is such a shame.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah, I
always things
agree.
that
It
connect
doesn't.
us, and we don't have to agree.
I agree. I have people that in my life that I know have differing views than me, and I still love them. I've learned maybe things from them, or maybe they've learned things from me. And I think if we were all alike, that would be really boring. So I don't know. I don't know. I just think love needs to be had in so many different regards, right? And have love for people. And, I just think sometimes people forget that humanity component. And I don't want to forget that personally. And I won't.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Yeah, and even people who are different than us and sometimes maybe even challenged us,
mhm,
if you think about it, we took something from them. They
mhm,
helped us elevate, whether because they pushed us up or whether it's because they try to push us down and we pushed against them.
mhm,
They they elevate us. They're part of our experience.
mhm.
So they, yeah, kind of look at it differently.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I feel like too in our culture, I was in the Mediterranean last year and, nobody's rushing. There is not this hustle culture. They will stop and they will chat with you, come have coffee. Like it's very hospitable. And I feel like our society is very like, oh my God, like, instead of just like, I don't know, like I talk to everybody when I'm out and about and I have conversations and I enjoy that. So I think our society here specifically in the US is a little standoffish. And, I would like that to be I would like to take in what the Mediterraneans are doing and enjoy that morning coffee and take that lunch break, take those vacation days
Yeah.
and that supports our mental health for everybody.
Yeah. Part of it is sometimes just about being more relaxed and spontaneous. When I grew up, we always had, like a little kind of a coffee cake in the house just in case a neighbor drops by or somebody
Yeah.
comes by. You have some things. And my mother-in-law used to do that too. They always have like cookies just in case somebody comes by. And people don't come by. Nobody just drops by.
Hmm.
Every gathering has to be planned several weeks in advance. We're just so busy and we just need to take ourselves a little less
Yep.
seriously and leave some room for
Yep.
spontaneity.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely agree.
Yeah.
What would your takeaway be for men who are looking to dip their toe? Sometimes that's just it, just got to dip their toe in. What would your takeaway be for men who are interested in improving their mental health?
I would say starting with meditation is a great way to start.
Okay.
Meditation, getting involved with a men's group, connect to your body.
Hmm.
Start asking yourself, where am I feeling my feelings? If the answer is in your head, you got some work to do. And do some research online about meditation, body connection, how to connect to feelings. Go see a therapist to work with on. Like I really don't see therapy as this thing you do only when you have to. We are so fortunate that we can have therapy,
Hmm.
and if you have health insurance that covers it, or if you can afford it, there's ways to. We're very fortunate that we can go and work on our emotional well-being. Do something, and meditation can be a really great first step.
Perfect. Yeah. Start bringing in some awareness. And, I feel like in the summertime, go for a walk. I don't know if you could do walking meditation or if it necessarily matters what kind, but just honing in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, any kind of mindfulness, mindful meditation being just checking in with yourself, like how am I feeling?
Hmm.
Ask yourself that question. How am I feeling?
Yeah.
What am I feeling? And spend a little take a moment or two to really kind of check in with yourself. Those
Yep.
are usually these kind of basic mini check-ins you can do with yourself to get in the habit of even you know, asking what's my emotional state right now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it.
Yeah.
I definitely think that my hope is that men or maybe women who have a man in their life listen to this and decide to take that first step and address their mental health and begin to notice their feelings and identify and seek connection because isolation is no way to live your life.
Absolutely. And if you are a woman listening to this and thinking about how to get your man to be more connected, to be more emotionally aware, start by actually asking him to do that.
Hmm.
Let him know that this is an area in your life that you're not satisfied with, and don't just kind of put it on the back burner, but let him
Hmm.
know and don't give up on him, you know? Keep telling him this is
Hmm.
something that you can do and I believe in you and here are some resources and read this and try that and ask for that because even if they don't see it or they don't know that they need it, they will thank you for it when they've done some of the work. So sometimes they need a push.
Yeah. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think I'm concerned about you. I'm worried about you. I want you to feel better. I want you to be more present. I want you to feel purpose. I mean, there's so many layers to this. And I don't want men to be like, oh, she's judging me. That's not it. I think it's coming from a place of
Mm.
love when your partner or your spouse is encouraging you to take matters into your own hands. And it's also very empowering in my opinion. I feel like initially I think maybe some men feel demasculated, but I think it's very empowering to be able to like take your power back and take your life back.
Yes. It's a way of kind of believing in someone, you know, believing that
Mhm.
someone can do something that they don't maybe see in themselves. And
Mhm.
you can say that to them. I see this as something that's valuable. I think you will value it. I think that's something
Mhm.
that's maybe missing for us or for you. And I want more for us. I want better for us, and I believe that you can do it. And coming
Mhm.
from that perspective of saying to someone, you know, there's something that can make our life better, and all I'm asking you is to
Mhm.
try, and I believe that you can. Okay,
Mhm.
why not?
Yeah, and I mentioned this in a previous episode. Sometimes therapy too is a little trial and error, right? You might go to one and it might not be the best fit, right? This is meant to be personal and it's
Yeah,
meant to resonate. It's meant to stir something. And it's like going for a haircut. Sometimes you get a bad one, but you don't stop getting your haircut just because, you get a bad haircut and you find someone else.
that's right.
I will definitely um, have your website listed, how to contact you if people have questions. I would love to list
I
Mankind. I
appreciate it.
think I don't know if it was a Western New York group. I know you sent it to me, so I'll list that as well. And if you have social
Yes,
media, I'll put that on there too because we'll have a clip out there from today where you can share and hopefully a link to direct people to be able to listen to this.
wonderful. I look forward to it, and I'm really so happy that you asked me to join you, and I'm so proud of you for doing this podcast.
Thank
It's
you.
great.
It's been a fun someone called it a passion project, and I'm like, what kind of is? And I've enjoyed it. I know it's virtual we're doing this, but it's been fun connecting with people and talking with people. And yeah, I call it a passion project. So I'm really enjoying it. So thank you.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
yeah, that's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me for today's conversation on the Unapologetic Midlife podcast. If this episode spoke to you, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps others find this space of honesty, hope, and reinvention. The Unapologetic Midlife podcast is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical, mental health, or professional advice. Listening to this podcast does not create a therapeutic relationship with Mindy Labazetta, LMHC. Always consult with a qualified healthcare or mental health professional regarding your individual needs. If you are experiencing a crisis, call 911 or dial 988 for the Suicide Crisis Lifeline. Hope to see you soon.